All right, so Georgia and Florida today releasing a statement about the game in Jacksonville very specifically. And I'm going to read it to you, and I've got, of course, plenty of commentary afterward. This is coming from both the Dogs and Gators, and it reads as such. The annual game between our two universities is an important tradition. At this time, both programs are focused on our current seasons. Typically, both schools begin conversations regarding future games in the series as the last contracted game nears. We anticipate following that timeline. When those discussions take place, we will consider a multitude of factors, including tradition, finances, future SEC scheduling models, with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, and what is best for both schools' football programs overall. Well, that's basically, I know we are not at the end of the agreement from 2019. So just to rewind, in 2019, that was when Georgia and Florida extended their contract with the city. And I talked with Greg McGarity about that. He was the athletic director at the time. Uh, and this is how the article read in 2019. Okay, this was about a week. I think it was a little bit less than a few days before that game in 2019. So the announcement on Friday that Georgia and the Gators were extending the longstanding agreement to play in Jacksonville wasn't much of a surprise, but it did come with a caveat. The new contract would only be for 2 years. It has a 2-year extension that's allowed, but the agreement is only through 2023. And here's what Greg said. He said it allows the schools to. He said this to me. It allows the schools to have a look at. Excuse me. It allows the schools to have a look at it every 2 years. All parties were comfortable with the 2-year extension. It is an event Jacksonville is committed to keeping the game because of the financial piece, which is huge. And right now, both schools over a 2-year period are getting paid $5 million a year minimum. It's at least about $5 million. In 2023, I reported at the time, by the time the 2023 game has concluded, Georgia will have pocketed an additional $10 million with the understanding that the 2-year extension to the 2025 game would be, quote, at least another $5 million. So the money isn't going backwards. Um, so the long story short of this is as follows. When you're making about $2.5 million a year more than you would from hosting a home game, that doesn't seem like much in a 1 year scenario. But over a 10-year period, that's $25 million. That is a lot of financial stability, flexibility that you get by playing a game you've always played. This, in addition, this does not preclude, none of this precludes the two schools from getting a title sponsor. That's not happened ever that I'm aware of. Well, it's not happened ever. So I'm aware. That's never happened between these two schools. It could be the dog post Georgia Florida game, or the Gainesville Sun. So you get my point. And that would involve more revenue as well. So there's still money that's being left on the table. AT&T for years was the sponsor of the Red River rivalry, a shootout, whatever they call it, in Texas and Oklahoma. However, um, you know, speaking of Texas and Oklahoma, we knew when Georgia and Florida played this game in 2021 that Oklahoma and Texas were coming into the league. We knew that. We knew that Georgia and Florida would still we didn't know, but there's no doubt, and they're signaling this in this statement. There's no doubt that Georgia and Florida will play from here on out. Okay. Uh, what there is some doubt about, though, is a 9-game schedule in the league and the future of the college football playoff. Pick up DAWGSTRUCTION today. It's a great holiday gift. You need to go ahead and take advantage of that. If you do, you get a shirt like this, but you have to email me from our friends at Red Zone and take advantage of that. You can also take advantage of DoorDash. Talked about this a lot with DoorDash. Enter the code DAWG dog down below. 50% off, a $20 value, no delivery fees. It's right down there. Please take advantage of this. That's a really killer deal. We don't know. I think okay, so the full transparency, I would think it makes more sense to leave the game in Jacksonville. There's a lot of different reasons why. I've talked about that in the past, but I would say more than anything, you don't want to change who you are. That's number one. Number two, the money is great. I mean, number three, people are just used to it. That they're used to playing down there. I did not always feel this way. I think there's a lot of caveats with what I'm talking about. I'm not going to talk about all of that in this video, but the negatives to point in Jacksonville is you're not playing at home ever, and that's a problem to some degree. What we need to see here are two things. First of all, and I think these two things will totally dictate the future. A, is there going to be a 9-game SEC schedule? Okay, that is probably the most important thing. If there is a 9-game SEC schedule, what does that mean for Georgia and Tennessee? What does that mean for Florida and Tennessee? What does that mean for everybody in the league? I mean, Georgia and Florida are Auburn, Alabama. There's no way those two don't play. But what you could be seeing is an unbalanced. What you will be seeing with a 9-game is you will see an unbalanced league schedule for every single school. Texas and Oklahoma play a neutral site. They will only play 4 home games every single year. Georgia and Florida, in theory, they would only play a home game every other year, 4 home games every single year. Texas A&M and Arkansas, they would only play a 4-game home schedule every year. So now you're talking about 6 of the 16 teams already do the neutral site. I don't know if you can convince Arkansas and Missouri to play in St. Louis at the Edward Jones Dome or in Kansas City. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that would mean 8, which would be half the league. I don't know if you could convince, the other schools. Who is South Carolina going to play in a neutral site game? Tennessee and Atlanta, like these. So the schools are just going to have to choose to get in those situations, and I don't think that has to happen. I recall discussions of that. Is just no, it's not going to happen. Okay, I don't think it will ever happen. But um, once for Georgia and the Gators, right now, every other year they host 3 home games. In the future, it will be 4. Okay, that's what it's starting to look like. So I think that takes some of the sting off of it. Now, it doesn't address every single one of Kirby's issues, which is A, we don't get 5. Okay. B, we don't play our biggest game of the year at home. I mean, that would still not be the case. It would also not be the case for Texas and Oklahoma and the Gators, and you can make the case for Arkansas as well as A&M. I know that will be a little bit different for those two, but you can make the case certainly for Texas OU, Georgia, and the Gators. All right, those guys don't play the biggest home game. They don't play the biggest game at home ever. But to me, also too, because of the 9-game playoff, you're never going to do the 9-game without the college football playoff expanding. All right, you're not going to get one without the other. The SEC is not going to fraternize or whatever the word is. It's not going to kill itself off just so just for fun. That doesn't make sense in the Big 12 really. It's not really worked in the Pac-12. I don't know what the ACC does, but it's only been Clemson or nobody there, so that doesn't matter either. They don't play anybody. But I think in this league, you're gonna if the playoffs going to go to 12, you could see a 3-ring circus at places at times. They're not going to care because they know they're going to get 4 teams in the top 12, maybe 6. So I think that you're not going to get one without the other. Right now, this is probably, it is true that Georgia and Florida don't really announce things until right on top of the game. I mean, that's a common thing. I can't tell. I mean, part of me is like, are they going to really try to move this thing to campuses? Will they use this as an excuse going to the 9 game? Will they use it as an excuse to go to the campuses for a 1-2 stretch, like a one in Athens, one in Gainesville to balance the schedules, just for a 2 year situation? Or will they always, uh, will the default always be towards Jacksonville? This past week, last week, Kirby's I don't mean this bad. Kirby's rhetoric towards the game was a lot softer than I've ever heard it. So I don't know if folks have said to him, "Hey, listen, we're trying to get it to where you can recruit down there." Number one, or I don't know if the powers that be have said, "We're moving it. That's it," because you got to have both schools got to want to do it. All right. Um, I think if they do that, it will be a real shame. And I am not a blind, I'm not totally for Jacksonville. That's not what this is. It cost me, I don't know, anywhere from $700 to $1,000 every single year to go down there. I mean, it's expensive. Um, and it's it's not a home game. I mean, the home games at Georgia for me are easy. So I get it. But at the same time, there's just Georgia can't get a bigger regular season win than winning at in Jacksonville. They don't. I mean, I've been there when they've beaten Alabama in overtime, beaten Alabama in Athens, uh, you know, Tennessee, whatever, Georgia Tech, Auburn. It's not the same. It's not the same. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And so that's the part that I would be real wary of letting that go. I'd be real wary of letting that go just so you have another home game. Um, that that would be the part that I just kind of couldn't get away from. I mean, it will be just another game. It will be. I mean, the game in Jacksonville is always special. The 2010 game was special, okay? And both those teams were bad. So, you got Tennessee coming in a couple of weeks. That's a huge game. Was it a huge game in 2018 in Athens? Was it a huge game in 14? Not like Georgia, Florida. No. So that's what you would get. You would eliminate the backdrop, you'd eliminate the setting sun, you'd eliminate the St. John's, you'd eliminate that disgusting traffic. So that would be good. But I just don't know that you want to make that decision. Certainly not turn the faucet off completely. Um, and I would let Jacksonville come back to the table and say, "Hey, listen, y'all are saying this is a $30 million a year event for you. That's just the city. So Duval County. What is it for South Georgia? I mean, what is it for the Golden Isles? Is it, 10 or $15 million of revenue? That's not nothing. That's not nothing at all. So um, do you want to turn your back on let's just say a $40 million game down there just because the head coach wants to recruit more? A head coach that won't be the head coach forever in history. Because I think once this game leaves Jacksonville, it probably won't come back. I don't know that, but it probably won't. Change in college football, this is not the same. Auburn, Alabama moving to campuses, that should have happened. I mean, that was an Alabama home game in Birmingham, period. Everybody knows it. So that game, moving, that made sense. Um, I I think in a world where we've watched college football change a lot, this is one of the few things you really want to be careful about changing. And we'll see. We will see.